going to teach you guys the proper form for a hip thrust. The hip thrust has been an absolutely game-changing lift for me. As somebody who's very quad dominant, whenever I would do squats, it would just build up the front of my thighs, and by implementing the hip thrust into my routine regularly, it's really helped transform my physique and round and reshape my glutes. So the hip thrust is different from a glute bridge in that your shoulders are going to be propped up on a bench. A glute bridge, they are down on the ground. You want to find a bench that's the appropriate height. Ideally, it's going to hit right at the bottom of your shoulder blades so that at the top of the movement, your upper back is on top of the bench. If all you have are higher benches, you can actually put something underneath your feet to prop them up so that you are at the appropriate height. And then as far as your foot placement, you want your feet to be in a spot so that at the top of the movement, your shins are vertical. You want them perpendicular to the floor. So we don't want them way in here, and you don't want them too far out either. You want to be able to drive up through your heels to get those shins vertical. When you're doing a hip thrust, you actually really want to keep your chin tucked. And the reason for that is it's actually going to protect your lower back a lot. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate why that is. When I come up, I'm pushing through my heels. And when I keep my chin tucked, I'm actually taking a lot of the stress off of my lower back and just focusing on that posterior pelvic tilt to get that glute engagement. If I were to look up, it might look like I'm getting more hip extension, but what's actually happening is more curvature of my lumbar spine, and it's going to place a lot more weight on there. So when I have this loaded up, in the long run, this can do a lot of damage to my lower back. So we want to keep our chin tucked. If you want to look at something straight ahead and keep your eyes on it, that could also help. And you're going to come up and your head is not going to move. So during this motion, what you actually want to focus on is think about doing the motion from your sternum down. So we're not getting our whole body up into action like this. Our upper body is going to kind of stay here. Shins are vertical, weights in our heels, and just by moving at our sternum, we're just going to posteriorly tilt our pelvis like this. Looking straight forward, head's not moving, driving through the heels. You also want to drive your knees out so that they're not caving in at all. Okay, so kind of think about driving your knees out, just at the sternum, posterior pelvic tilt, squeeze those glutes at the top. You can progress the hip thrust a lot of different ways. A good way to start out would actually be adding a resistance band around your thighs. That'll help you focus on driving your knees out so they're not collapsing in. It's also going to target those outer glutes a lot more. Once you're ready, you can go ahead and add some resistance to it. Maybe start out with some dumbbells or a plate weight on top of your hips, and once you build up some of that strength and get comfortable with the movement, go ahead and add a loaded barbell. Once you get to the point of doing it with a barbell, I do recommend using a squat pad. It's going to really help ease up on those hip bones so that that weight's not just digging into your bone, and it's going to allow you to do a lot more resistance. So when you're doing this with a loaded barbell, you're just going to load your plates onto here, get your pad set. You're just going to slide your feet underneath and then roll it towards you. Get your feet planted, weights and heels. Knees are kind of driving out a bit. Got my shoulder blades on the bench. I'm actually just going to push up, get my upper back on top of the bench here. And then this is actually more of the start of my lift from the sternum down. I'm going to posteriorly tuck my pelvis forward, squeeze my glutes, back down, thrust, down, thrust. Weight is in my heels, gaze is forward, not moving. Set it down, roll it forward, and there's the hip thrust. Won't do a pull-up for me, but this is cool, huh?